Welcome to lesson 3.2. For this lesson, we're going to be really just focusing on the same concept we did last class, which was conditional statements, right? If this condition is true, then do this code. If this condition is not true, then just don't skip it over. Don't do the code. All right, so that's not going to change. We're actually going to be using the same idea and concept from there. This class, we're actually going to, or this lesson, we're going to be discussing more what are the possibilities of what we can do with an if statement? What can we make change on the screen based on this? So that's it. The focus we're going to be doing is how can we change the color of a shape, right? Using a conditional statement depending on like what the user's doing, and then how can we change the size of a shape depending on what a user's doing. So I mean, if you could think about some basic things like that, have you ever like hovered over something on the internet and it changed color, or maybe it got a little bit bigger to show that you were hovering over it? There's all sorts of things that you can imagine where this happens all the time. That's what we're going to be simulating. All right, but the idea is the same. We're just focused on conditional statements. All right, let's talk about first how to change the color of something using a conditional statement. So what we want to do is basically this. If my mouse is greater than 200, if the x position of my mouse is greater than 200, let's write this down. If the x position or coordinate, which I could spell, of the mouse is greater than 200, then change the color of a circle to blue. So check it out. Let's start with a regular circle. We'll start off as green. Okay, so I'm going to say fill 0, 255, 0. That's green. And then let's make an ellipse at 0, 200, 0. That is, what am I doing? Jeez, I was like thinking about green still. Bruh. All right, let's do it here. 100, 200, 100, 100. All right. So here we have this green circle, right? It's always green. Now I want this to change colors if my x coordinate of my mouse is greater than 200. All right. Let's just actually change that to 100. I think that'd be more interesting. All right. So if my x coordinate of my mouse is greater than 100, I want this to change to a different color. Now, how do I do that? Well, obviously there's going to be some if statement involved here. It's going to look like this. We're going to say this: if mouse x is greater than 100. Then in this curly braces, what do we want to happen? We want to change to blue, so I'll say fill 0, 0, 255. All right, now let's check this out. So if the x position of my mouse is greater than 100, then we're going to do a fill, right? We're actually like doing a different fill than green. We're doing fill to blue, 0, 0, 255. Let's see if this works. Yeah, look at that. All right, so it's changing color. It's probably around 100. It's looking pretty good here, right? Nice. Now, I just want to be clear about something. This won't always work. This actually, where I put this is very important. I kind of just glazed over this, but let's say I put that somewhere else. Let's say I put that over here on top of everything. So I put my if statement first. So let's take a different look at this. So I'm going to press play. Let's see if this still works. Doesn't work. Let's discuss why, right? Because the interesting thing here is, like, why is this not working? The code on the screen is exactly the same. The order changed, and that changed a lot. So the first thing you should know is that code executes from top to bottom, right? The computer literally goes in order. So the first thing it does is, in the draw function, it draws a background of gray. That's the first thing it does. It skips over this because it's a comment, and then it looks at this if statement. It says, if x is greater than 100, then let's create a fill of blue. So it does turn the fill to blue. But then immediately after that, it just goes to green. All right? So this blue gets immediately canceled out. It's like, oh, never mind. Let's just make it green. And then you draw the ellipse. So since this green is always on top of the ellipse, like right directly above it, it's always turning back to green. So nothing happens. That's why you have to put the if statement in between the original color, right, which was green, and the ellipse. Because now the order is different, right? It says turn this to green, and if the mouse x is greater than 100, then turn it to blue. All right, and that's like the last color it gets turned. And if it's not greater than 100, it just ignores all this code, right? It just doesn't even look at it. It says like, okay, I don't care. So this only runs if mouse x is greater than 100, and it's the last color that's applied to the ellipse. So if you look here, let's press play. Now it works again. All right. Beautiful. So it's very important that you put the if statement between the original color and the shape if you want it to change colors. All right, so that was challenge number 1. So now we know how to make a change color, right? We have to put it in between the original color and the shape. Once if I want to change size. So let's say this. If the x coordinate of the mouse is greater than 300, then change the size of the ellipse. Well, actually, then make the ellipse bigger. All right, now I'm going to put a new ellipse here. Let's work with a different ellipse here. So I'm going to work with this one. I'm going to say it's ellipse. I'm going to make this one at, I don't know, 250, 100, 100. No, 250, 200. Let's do 300. Like that? Yeah, that's good. Those are evenly spaced out. Now, let's give this a different color so that it doesn't get affected by that other one. So let's give this a fill of 255 so it's white. Okay, great. So this is our other circle. This one we want to change size whenever we get our mouse x is greater than 300. Now, this one's interesting. Let's talk about how to do this. So if we want this to change size, what we need is to change this third number. Now you might be used to this. There's 4 numbers. Here's a little tip. If you want the width and the height to be the same, you just need 300. So this is saying, all right, we want the center 300, 200, and we want the diameter of this circle to be 100. All right. Now, if I want this to get bigger, I need to make the diameter bigger. Like, right, I want this thing to be 200. What we need, if we're going to change that number, is a variable, right? We can't change that 100 unless we have a variable there. So let's make a variable like we used to. Remember those days? So let's go to the top of our code. All right, and we're going to say this. We're going to say let d for like diameter. All right, and we're going to put that up here. So declare variable. That's our first step. We're going to make a I wish I could spell. All right, so we're going to say that. Now remember that we create a variable at the top of the code. Now the next thing to do is to initialize it. Now you can initialize in the setup, but actually for this, then you can play around and figure out why. We're going to initialize this in the draw function. So here I'm going to say d is equal to 100. Now why did I pick 100 for my starting? Don't we usually start with 0? Because the diameter is 100, so I'm just going to replace it here. So that doesn't change anything. If I press play, the diameter is still 100 because I initialized it to 100. So initialize size, right? It's 100. Now, the last part of this is to change it. Now, this if statement doesn't matter where it goes. You really could put it anywhere. I'm just going to put it right here above the fill statement. And here's what we're going to say. We're going to say if mouse x is greater than 300, right? If the x squared of my mouse is greater than 300, then what do I want to do? I want to get bigger. So what that means is the diameter has to increase. So all I have to do is set the diameter to a bigger number. So let's make it 200. And if I press play now, let's take a look here. Okay, that one's turning blue when it's greater than 100. And now this one's getting, see, when my mouse x is greater than 300, this gets bigger. So I can now change the color and the size of shapes, and I'm interacting with my creation. Cool. Boom, boom, boom. So that's the 2 things we learned today. How to change the color. Remember, it's really just important where you put the what's it called? The if statement. And then also we learned how to change the size. We need a variable. We declare it. We initialize it. Oh, we should also say we use it. And then we just create our if statement. All right, that's it for this lesson. Boop, 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 beep.